Welcome everyone. Thanks so much indeed for joining us for another packed installment of Fyne Conf. It is amazing to be here in sunny Berlin. I can't blame anybody who decided that outdoors was better than indoors this afternoon, but it is of course about quality, not quantity. So I hope that you've brought some open minds to be inspired and a notebook full of questions to help us fix up your concerns, apps, or help you get started with the project in some way. It's great to be able to see a growing community, and with more and more people coming along each year, hopefully, we can see something really fantastic come together here. Online is one thing, but there's just no alternative to getting together. So thank you for taking the journey or the cross the street to be here with us today. For anybody that I have not met before, hi, my name's Andrew. I started Fyne over 6 years ago. I have been a software engineer for, I think, over 2 decades commercially, and have experience previously with the Maven project, Enlightenment, and on a bit of a curveball was recently appointed the chair of the board of directors for Scotland's digital technology trade body. So that's an interesting overlap to see. We're all thinking, where is the future of this industry and how do we get it there? Thanks very much for the speakers who've contributed to today. We've got people from around the community that are going to be contributing. Fantastic to the people who could make it in person. Others are contributing remotely. Due to personal situations, the remote speakers have pre-recorded, and so we're not going to have a live Q&A with anybody that's coming in remotely, but we can still have a spirited discussion in the room. But first, a little bit of a reminder, particularly to anybody who is new to the community. The app building landscape, as I'm calling it, is confusing, to put it mildly. Perhaps it is a little treacherous, as the landscape illustration is aiming for. There's a lot of great commercial efforts there. People shout about the importance of UX, but they will show you how to do it for their platform. These companies want you to help their ecosystem rather than to make the world a better place for everyone. It is, I find it quite complex to get started with the general concept. You need to, all the tools to build it. You've got a lot to learn. And in some situations, you actually have to have specific hardware to be even invited to the party. There's a lot of cross-platform efforts. I wish I had maybe $1.50 for each time somebody asks me, but doesn't this exist already? Legacy languages are not what we want to be using, and they have drawbacks, not least of all, that your application may have to have runtime installed or system set up to even execute out of the box, which of course is not really something that people are going to be excited about. And some of the better projects, some of the more popular ones even, have really low-level APIs. They make it possible to do amazing things, but to get started with something that looks good out of the box is not kind of what they're aiming for. And lastly, I include this just for completeness. You could use the web, which is great for some things, sharing documentation, data, all of those things, great, and it is the right platform for those, but it may not be the right way to build a user interface for a native application that you're going to take with you. Which is to say, there was a project needed, and that is why Fyne was started. I have in my head the idea that we can build something much, much better, that we can be the best toolkit for easily developing beautiful, native graphical applications for desktop and for mobile and many other platforms which may even get spoken about later today. It tries to be the toolkit we deserve. Now, I'm going to assume that most people here know, therefore, why this is important and have perhaps tried it. You're going to be able to write something once and have it compile for all different devices. These applications are just going to work. There's no setup, no complicated communications, and no delivering files alongside your application. We don't even need installers. We're going to be using modern techniques and the Go programming language, which helps everything come together, because we know there is generally a best way to do things, and Go helps us ignore the stuff that doesn't matter and focus on the things that does. All of this is lowering the barrier to entry so that absolutely anybody can get into building applications with whatever their experience level, and they can build something that looks good by default. And even if this is the first time you're programming, you're going to start from best practice, people showing you how things could be, should be, perhaps hint at the right direction to take your code as you learn. Anyhow, apologies if anybody has heard that before. I feel like I say that every month or two for the last 5 years, but I think it's still fundamentally important, and hopefully a few people agree, or we wouldn't be chatting about it today. But really, this first session this afternoon was for me to take an opportunity to tell everybody what is new in the Fyne universe. What have the team been working on? What's been delivered since Fyne Conf 2023? For anybody who was there, it's not that far away, but the other side of the water. The weather was nowhere near as glamorous, although there was blue sky, which of course there always is in Edinburgh. It's a beautiful city. For everybody joining us for the first time, this is a bit of a catch-up, I suppose. You might have seen online. Anyhow, it has been an exceptionally busy year for the team. We had, I believe, 6 releases were delivered, and that includes the 2.5 series. It started with version 2.5.0. It included hundreds of fixes and loads more features as well. The community keeps on growing online. I don't know if you actually judge anything by GitHub stars or not, but we increased by about 3,000 more. The number up there is already out of date because I only updated it yesterday. We are just short of 25,000, but I'm going to enjoy a nice cool beer this evening no matter what. I use this graph to illustrate that the growth is continuing, and I'd like to put it in context with some of the other projects, which is not to do a direct comparison, but just to indicate the type of growth speed that you can expect for a project of this type, of this size. It takes years to get going, but to keep growing after those years, I think, is what indicates that you're capturing people who didn't used to work in this space and are excited about where it's going. We did reach. Oh no, we didn't. We almost reached, like 2 away, I think, the next 1,000 for YouTube subscribers. So 2,000 would have been a real milestone. Please do help us. If you're watching us on YouTube, or if you aren't yet, how would you be hearing this? Please do subscribe, and we can celebrate that one this evening. And even if that doesn't work, we can celebrate that across the different social media platforms, not including video and live streaming. We do have 1,000 followers, so that's across the various different channels on Discord, Matrix, Slack, and various others, which I'll mention. So thanks to everybody who's following us, but also to the people who are on the social media, being part of the community and helping others out along the way. Lastly, online, we've had a tremendous growth of about 30% on the apps listing website. So this is open source applications that people are wanting to share with each other to promote their work and also to help others to understand what's possible. And we have this year had more conferences than ever before. It's exhausting, but it's really exciting. We have broken into some of the more major Go conferences. In fact, I believe that Go Singapore is now the only headline Go conference that Fyne has not been presented at. And partly, that I think is just because they pushed their dates from September out to January, so hopefully we can get that resolved in the context of the wider year. And I will come to a little bit later, Fyne is being used in more different places than ever before. And I don't mean geographically, but by exciting new platforms that are coming together. So to talk a little bit about this 2.5 major release that came together, in case you're not familiar with some of the functionality, we added localization. There's a bunch of new widgets and containers that are going to help to pull together more exciting applications, and improved support for Wayland and web deliverables. I'm going to come back to those in a moment. Also, we included the ability to look up system fonts automatically. So instead of users in Japan complaining that your app that you've tested only in a Latin alphabet of some sort doesn't work, it will do if their system is appropriately configured, which it will be because they have the fonts that they need. So we're now delegating to the platform. Due to fantastic contributions from the community, we've got undo, redo in entry, and that kind of improvement to lots and lots of widgets across the entire toolkit. But to come back to some of those headline ones, I wanted to mention, or rather talk through some of the details for translation and localization. It's kind of new for us. It's also not standardized across Go, so we had to look at this carefully. Obviously, it's covering multiple different languages. We've introduced some new APIs for understanding locale and user configuration for their current Preferences. I was going to say location. It's not quite right. It covers more than that. And as was discussed over lunch, there are many, many different versions of English, some of which do or don't call themselves English. So we're helping to understand that and deliver a good experience for your users. The font lookup is really essential to this. It means that if you include languages that your app hasn't bundled, which we don't want to because some fonts are massive, we can use the system fonts, and so these work quite well together. And we are working towards full internationalization, step by step. Now, one thing this slide is saying is not, oh, he's reading it, it's not well prepared. It's saying, actually, this was in last year's presentation. This is what we were going to do for you, and this is what has been delivered. So for once, I feel quite glad that I could just take, here's our plan, here's what we delivered, which is amazing. A little bit of the details, though, to get stuck into what this means. There is a new package called Lang, unsurprisingly, that is going to deliver language features. The simplest way to get started is just to mark your text for translation. There are super short function names, just for brevity, called L, N, X, and XN, which I'll explain. They are short forms of the longer methods, which I'll go into here. L means localize, which is essentially translate this piece of text for me. You tell it the string that you would like to have translated into a language, and then the toolkit is going to put the right thing in there for you. Then there is X, or localize key. The naming was collaborative with a few people who know how these things work, so X makes sense in the grand scheme of things, where the text isn't enough information to get the right string. So we have a key that's going to be looked up. This is really useful for ambiguous phrases, pieces of text, or more complex scenarios that we'll look at a little. So here we have a new message that greets users of your application, and we give it a sensible default. In the first case, it will default to what's given, and it will look up the translation using the same text. And these also accept information about what data can be put into that. So using the same method as the format package and the sprintf, or printf, you can drop data in using placeholders, and any number of items of data can be included there. And that goes for both of the above. And the other two, which are ln and xn, which is pluralized forms of those two. So this may seem unimportant, and if it doesn't matter to you, it might not matter to you, or it might mean that you don't know quite the complexity that some languages that you're not familiar with have. Now, I used an example here which I think makes sense to anybody familiar with English. You might want to localize the string friends, but you realize that sometimes it's only one friend. For good reasons, I'm sure. In this case, we want to indicate or put into our user interface friends, but when there's only one, and I've hard-coded it here, we want actually the system to go friend. And so that method there, the pluralized forms, allow you to specify multiple strings, and in different languages, you can have different numbers or different turning points for those localized pluralities. I'm no expert, but we're assured it works. There haven't been many people saying it needs more at this stage, so pretty excited that that's delivered on what people needed. To get data in to your application, there are various different APIs added. I'm not going to go into them all, but suffice to say they all start add translations. You can add them one by passing a resource to that function. You can add them in bundles. You can use mounted file systems using the built-in Go functionality for handling multiple files in a directory. And these use a JSON format. We decided not to go with the C-based common function formats that people understand because, I mean, how many parsers of different languages do you want inside one toolkit? And everybody who's using Go pretty much understands JSON. And there was a really excellent Go I18N project established, and we found that most of the online translation tools supported it. So we went with that, and it looks like this. You can see the first 5 are the simple versions of a translation where it's unambiguous. This is obviously the English file. They're basically identical. And then further down, we've got the disambiguation, so where name and parent could differ across different contexts. We've specified that this relates to the file. And if you wanted to use pluralized forms, you would put them under there with the key being the number that it was pluralized for. And all of these could be format specifiers rather than plain strings. Cool, okay. I hope that really helps. I realized when we were preparing this that the documentation in this area is a little bit light, so this slide may translate directly into some documentation later in the week. But now onto something a little bit more graphical. Actually, a little different is what I have in my slides for the fans out there of Monty Python. So we have a few containers that were added. Theme override is a new one that a lot of people may have been screaming out for, but didn't realize. A chance for your application to look different in a certain area, which could be to differentiate between content that you're editing and the tools that your user interface is formed by, or to preview something that's going to change that is a standard widget, but you want to influence the output of. So I have a simple example, honestly it's simple, a little slides application there that I've put together using Markdown on the left, which it renders on the right. That's an example there of where you might want to have a differently styled element of your application. Next up are two new containers called inner window and multiple windows. An inner window, apologies for anybody who knows my approach to naming, is for putting one window inside another. It will allow you to float content around. The user can move and resize and close this as they want, with callbacks familiar if you've ever done any window handling at the outer level. But more interesting is when you combine it with multiple windows, because then you can have lots of different inner windows stacking on top of each other, and the user can also maximize, minimize, and do more complex handling. So if anybody was really sad that they used to do MDI applications on Windows and just nothing could do that anymore, this is an opportunity for you to revive 25-year-old code base and feel that it's happier. Obviously, there are some challenges here. If you're trying to squeeze all that onto a small smartphone, you may have some challenges, and we have not automatically done anything. It's an MDI interface. That's kind of what it's built for. A couple of smaller widgets that have also been added. A new activity widget, sometimes called a spinner or a throbber, depending on your interface, is going to just indicate that something's happening. It can be inline, like the first line, just to let people know. You could also have that overlay on a button if, for example, you wanted to block the user from progressing in a situation until the activity was resolved. Grid wrap, from another of our team members who couldn't be here today, is like the grid wrap layout that you might have used in a container before, but it has the optimizations of list built in. So that window there, which is showing 9 files with pretty short names, could be showing you the top of a directory with thousands and thousands of items in it. But you can scroll through at speed as you would expect from a performing user interface. So the widget there taking advantage of caching and the advanced scroll capabilities that a container, being a fairly straightforward object, can't. And 25 new widget APIs, not 25 new widgets, but things that people have been asking for. Things like hiding separators in the collections, adding text style to items within a text grid for lower level kind of coder interfaces, things like that. And we've also made sure that disableable is supported across a wider range of widgets like slider, toolbar action. It should pretty much be everywhere that you'd expect now. I think that goes for the sort of feature additions in terms of things that you might see inside your application. Now for feature additions that show the entire application in new places. The web driver is now pretty complete. It's fully functional if you're not doing file I/O with local files. We're still working on that. The technology that we're built on top of isn't quite there, and we're hoping that WASI might be the solution, so we held off a little longer. That should be resolved in the next release. But for now, your application, apart from file access, is going to work completely, including all of the new widgets you see. This is the Fyne demo running in a browser window. You would get that. It says localhost because I was playing around, but if you go to demo.fyne.io, you will see the WebDriver in action. So that's great. You can finally just use that in your own application with the Fyne CLI that you might be familiar with. Just type Fyne serve, and it will tell you that the server files are being served, where to go with your browser. We also have Wayland support is now in, which is great. That is working very nicely. It is one step away from being on by default. You need to use tags Wayland in your compile to tell it that it should be turned on, because again, the technology we're using doesn't currently auto-switch appropriately, and for most distributions where people aren't sure how the Linux is configured, it's probably X, so that's still the default. Again, in the next version, we expect to advance that and it will auto-switch, but for now, use the parameter. That's just a lovely Wayland window containing a lovely music player by Drew, another one of our contributors, which is cool. Actually, it seems to be a project that people love to get involved in, because Thilo's first project with Fyne was a music player as well. So it's a nice chance to bring in a bit of graphics and listen to good music at the same time. And lastly, the mobile experience has been quite well enhanced. Content is going to adjust to the space on screen, so you no longer get the keyboard occluding things or having to figure out how to adjust it. It's going to handle everything out of the box a lot better, which I think has helped to expand where Fyne is being used. We have instances of applications that are standard builds that are being used on non-standard or non-familiar devices. So this is our demo Solitaire app running on a Steam Deck, which is pretty cool. If anybody's interested and have one at home and it's in a cupboard gathering dust, I can now tell you how to get really top-notch AAA category games running on that user interface. Very, very easy, same code base as your Fyne app for everything else. And also Linux Phone is really coming together nicely. Not only are the applications better set up, because most of the Linux phones are Wayland. So last time I used that word, apologies if it means nothing to you, don't worry. But also that includes one of the community members who has their phone running Fyne Desk with Fyne apps on top of that. So they have the full graphical stack running in Fyne, much like I do on my coding laptop when I'm not working with Apple's beautiful products. We've also seen it adapted to run on new architectures and strange new devices, like industry sensors. That's a Fyne app, which kind of blew my mind when somebody pointed it out to me. You can purchase that online if you're into industrial sensors and you've got some cash to throw at them. And one that I was really excited about is the remarkable paper now has been shown running Fyne apps. These have required a little bit of modification, but with a little bit of interest in the space, we might find that things like that become part of the core package as well. But we are always looking to find out more what's going on around the community and what people are excited about. So please do tell us what you are working on. Share your apps, whether it's with the community or somebody that you bump into in the street, because people are more into app development than you realize. So do tell everybody about Fyne. I don't know if anybody noticed it, but there was a bit of a meme not so long ago where Microsoft did a survey of, in 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Windows to a colleague? Somebody responded to them and said, "I'm sorry, Microsoft, but you don't understand. People don't go around recommending operating systems." And somebody comments, "Okay, Linux, hold my beer." So yeah, folk are really into toolkits and graphical advancements and technologies like that. Joking aside, the community is really excited to see and be inspired by what's going on. We've got a growing FyneX repository, which if you're not familiar with, is like the toolkit, but enhancements from the community, new widgets, new layouts, new dialogues. And be part of the chat channels, join one of our servers, talk to other developers, and we will come back to that a little bit more later on. But all of that is to say, welcome to Fyne Conf 2024. I say with my best Tony Stark voice. We have had a morning of contributor discussions, which was very fruitful and enjoyable. Thanks everybody who came along for that. And we have an afternoon of great presentations. We're going to finish up with an AMA or QA session that's open to everybody. We're not going to be live streaming that portion because it's a bit awkward. So do get your questions in early if you're online, but we will answer anything that comes in from that channel to the channel it came from, if that makes sense. And other than that, If you're remote, ask questions as we go. We'll try and catch them at the end of each presentation. If you're in the room, I think people generally are preferring if you hold questions until the last slide so that we know where things are with timing. And there's an opportunity, an ample opportunity to ask more questions at the end of the event, where if we finish early, we get more light refreshments. We have to thank very much Just Relate and Fyne Labs for their sponsorship today. Without it, it wouldn't be possible to be here. Just Relate are the banners that you see on either side of us. They've kindly helped out. It's the company that Thilo works at. He will tell you more about it, but we don't have slides to tell you about it right now. But do go and find out about them, pick up a sticker, or again, tell your friends. I mean, you know, it's all good. Yeah, we have stickers floating around. They're excellent stickers. I ran out of Fyne Lab stickers, which were cool. They said build the future. I think there's probably one on my laptop over here if you're in the room. Next time you see me, I'll have a stack of them if that helps. Sorry. They are a software business that has various products, but you know, targeted at medium-sized enterprises kind of thing. So Thilo didn't want to sell you anything today, which is fine. I work at Fyne Labs. I also don't want to sell you anything today, but I do want to tell you that we do everything we can to make sure that the community is moving forward as the voice it needs to gather new members. And we also build some pretty cool software aimed at smaller or earlier stage businesses, and I can tell you more about it later, but there will be a presentation that incorporates it, and we're doing some pretty cool things with build automation and also low code, which definitely will come up later on.